And then continuing on here with Unferth's rude words to Beowulf. Are you the Beowulf who competed with Breca? Breca means breaker. And it's just like a personification of the sea, perhaps. Uh, Vied with him at swimming in the open sea, when, swollen with vanity, you both braved the waves, risked your lives on deep waters because of a foolish boast. I like the actor who plays Grima Wormtongue in The Two Towers. I always think of him when I think of Unferth. No one, neither friend nor foe, could keep you from your sad journey when you swam out to sea, clasped in your arms the water streams, passed over the sea paths, swiftly moved your hands and sped over the ocean. The sea heaved, the winter flood. For 7 nights you both toiled in the water. Note that their swimming contest, his and Brecca's, takes place over exactly 7 nights. So it's a week that it takes place. And it's going to be significant because it's essentially what's known to comparative mythologists as a night sea journey that Beowulf undertakes. He's imitating the role of the sun as it goes underneath the underworld, encounters monsters, slays them, and emerges victorious with the sunlight in the following morning. But Breca outstayed you. He was the stronger, and then on the 8th morning, the sea washed him up on the shores of the Heatheremes, who live basically in Norway. From there, he sought his own country, the land of the Brondings, who loved him well. Their name, too, also has something to do with the sea. Um, he went to his fair stronghold, where he had a hall and followers and treasures. In truth, Bainstan's son fulfilled his boast that he could swim better than you. So I am sure you will pay a heavy price, although you have survived countless battle storms, savage swordplay, if you dare ambush Grendel in the watches of the night. Beowulf, the son of Ecgtheow, replied, Truly, Unferth, my friend, all this beer has made you talkative. You have told us much about Breca and his exploits, but I maintain I showed the greater stamina, endured hardship without equal in the heaving water. Some years ago, when we were young men, still in our youth, Breca and I made a boast, a solemn vow, to venture our lives on the open sea. When he was still in his youth. He's only 20 years old, but apparently in a society where the life expectancy is probably 30 years old, as it has been throughout most of history, a 20-year-old was already moving on into a kind of middle age. And we kept our word. When we swam through the water, we each held a naked sword with which to ward off whales. By no means could Breca swim faster than I, pulled away from me through the press of the waves. I had no wish to be separated from him. So for 5 nights we stayed together in the sea until the tides tore us apart, the foaming water, the freezing cold, day darkening into night, until the north wind, that savage warrior, rounded against us. Rough were the waves, fishes in the sea were roused to great anger. Then my coat of mail, hard and hand-linked, guarded me against my enemies. The woven war garment, adorned with gold, covered my breast. A cruel ravager dragged me down to the seabed. A fierce monster held me tightly in its grasp, but it was given to me to bury my sword, my battle weapon, in its breast. The mighty sea beast was slain by my blow in the storm of battle. And so the night sea journey then is something I think that was first discovered by Leo Frobenius, or figured out by Leo Frobenius, a 19th and early 20th century German anthropologist and explorer of Africa, and then inherited from his work The Old Age of the Sun Gods by Carl Jung, who talks about it, and then Joseph Campbell used it as the basis for the monomyth of the hero's journey and the hero with a thousand faces, which is simply the night sea journey as the sun's journey through the underworld, as in the case of the sun god Re in ancient Egypt, who journeys on an underworld version of the Nile and fights the Apophis serpent every morning and has to overcome it to climb back up into the sky with his sun barge. That's one example of a night sea journey, but typically it involves a hero being swallowed up by a whale or a monster of some kind, or if he isn't, and in Beowulf's case he isn't, he fights a sea monster of some kind and is victorious during the night, the time of the ruling constellations. And so this is the sun in the underworld. And then he's victorious and emerges again the next day at dawn. With my fine sword I served them fittingly. I did not allow those evil destroyers to enjoy a feast, to eat me limb by limb, seated at a banquet on the sea bottom. But the next morning they lay in the sand along the shore, wounded by sword strokes, slain by battle blades, and from that day on they could not hinder seafarers from sailing over deep waters. Light came from the east. That's a clue that that's what this is. This is a night sea journey where Beowulf is being associated by the Beowulf poet with the sun. And so he's essentially a solar hero. God's bright beacon, the swell subsided, and I saw then great headlands, cliffs swept by the wind. Fate will often spare an undoomed man if his courage is good. As it was, I slew 9 sea beasts with my sword. I have never heard of a fiercer fight by night under heaven's vault, nor of a man who endured more on the ocean's streams, but I escaped with my life from the enemy's clutches, worn out by my venture. Then the swift current, the surging water, carried me to the land of the Lapps, to Finland, basically. I have not heard tell that you have taken part in any such contests in the peril of swordplay. It's interesting that of the two of them, one wound up in Norway, Brecka wound up in Norway, and Beowulf wound up in Finland. Neither you nor Brecka have yet dared such a deed with shining sword in battle. I do not boast because of this, though of course it is true you slew your own brothers, your own close kinsmen. And so note that it was well known that word had got round that Unferth was a slayer of his kinsmen, of his brothers, apparently. We don't know what the story is, but that links him with Cain and Abel, with Cain's fratricidal slaying of Abel, and hence with Grendel, and that puts Brecka on the bad side, even though he is the king's, Hrothgar's most trusted advisor, perhaps after Hrothulf, his nephew Hrothulf, who acts as a co-regent. For that deed, however clever you may be, you will suffer damnation in hell. I tell you truly, son of Edgelaf, that if you were in fact as unflinching as you claim, the fearsome monster Grendel would never have committed so many crimes against your lord, nor created such havoc in Heorot. But he has found he need not fear unduly your people's enmity, fearsome assault with swords by the victorious Scyldings. So he spares none, but takes his toll of the Danish people, does as he will, kills and destroys, expects no fight from the Spear Danes. And so note that he ends up slandering the entire Danish people, all of them, in his attempt to crush Unferth. But soon, quite soon, I shall show him the strength, the spirit, and skill of the Geats, and thereafter when day dawns, when the radiant sun shines from the south over the sons of men, he who so wishes may enter the mead hall without terror. Then the grizzled warrior, giver of gold, was filled with joy. The lord of the Danes, shepherd of his people, listened to Beowulf's brave resolution and relied on his help. The warriors laughed. There was a hum of contentment. Wealhtheow came forward, mindful of ceremonial. She was Hrothgar's queen. Adorned with gold, that proud woman greeted the men in the hall, then offered the cup to the Danish king first of all. She begged him, beloved of his people, to enjoy the feast. The king, famed for victory, ate and drank in happiness. Then the lady of the Helmings walked about the hall, offering the precious ornamented cup to old and young alike, doing her duty as a good queen, serving the men, keeping them happy. Until at last the queen, excellent in mind, adorned with rings, moved with the mead cup towards Beowulf. She welcomed the Attish prince, and with wise words thanked God that her wish was granted, that she might depend on some warrior for help against such attacks. The courageous man took the cup from Wealhtheow's hands, and, eager for battle, made a speech. Beowulf, the son of Ecgtheow, said, "When I put to sea, sailed through the breakers with my band of men, I resolved to fulfill the desire of your people, or suffer the pangs of death, caught fast in Grendel's clutches. Here in Heorot, I shall either work a deed of great daring, or lay down my life." Beowulf's brave boast delighted Wealhtheow. Adorned with gold, the noble Danish queen went to sit beside her lord. Then again, as of old, fine words were spoken in the hall. The company rejoiced, a conquering people, until in due course the son of Halfdane wanted to retire and take his rest. So nighttime is coming, and the constellations are rising, and the hall is going to belong to Grendel. He realized the monster meant to attack Heorot after the blue hour, when black night has settled over all, when shadowy shapes come shrithing dark beneath the clouds. All the company rose. Then the heroes Hrothgar and Beowulf saluted one another. Hrothgar wished him luck and control of Heorot, and confessed, "Never since I could lift hand and shield have I entrusted this glorious Danish hall to any man as I do now to you. Take and guard this greatest of halls. Make known your strength. Remember your might. Stand watch against your enemy. You shall have all you desire if you survive this enterprise." And he obviously does not think that Beowulf is going to have any luck. Then Hrothgar, defender of the Danes, withdrew from the hall with his band of warriors. The warlike leader wanted to sleep with Wealhtheow, his queen. It was said the mighty king had appointed a hall guard, a man who undertook a dangerous duty for the Danish king, elected to stand watch against the monster. Truly the leader of the Geats fervently trusted in his own great strength and in God's grace. Then he took off his helmet and his corselet of iron and gave them to his servant, with his superb adorned sword, telling him to guard them carefully. And then before he went to his bed, the brave Geat Beowulf made his boast. "I count myself no less active in battle, no less brave than Grendel himself. Thus I will not send him to sleep with my sword, so deprive him of life, though certainly I could. Despite his fame for deadly deeds, he is ignorant of these noble arts, that he might strike at me and hew my shield. But we this night shall forego the use of weapons, if he dares fight without them, and then may wise God the Holy Lord give glory in battle, to whichever of us he should think fitting. Then the brave prince leaned back, put his head on the pillow, while around him many a proud seafarer lay back on his bed. Not one of them believed he would see day dawn, or ever return to his family and friends in the place where he was born. They well knew that in recent days far too many Danish men had come to bloody ends in that hall. But the Lord wove the webs of destiny, gave the Geats success in their struggle, help, and support in such a way that all were enabled to overcome their enemy through the strength of one man. We cannot doubt that mighty God has always ruled over mankind, at least until he showed up after Wotan was doing the ruling. Then the night prowler came slithering through the shadows. All the Geats guarding Heorot had fallen asleep, all except one. Men well knew that the evil enemy could not drag them down into the shadows when it was against the Creator's wishes, but Beowulf, watching grimly for his adversary Grendel, awaited the ordeal with increasing anger. Then under night's shroud Grendel walked down from the moors. He shouldered God's anger. The evil plunderer intended to ensnare one of the race of men in the high hall. He strode under the skies until he stood before the feasting hall in front of the gift building gleaming with gold. And it's, as we established, it's an echo Valhalla, and it's adorned with gold that links it with the sun, and so it's been unjustly invaded by the realm of the night and the powers that are associated with the night, the realm of shadows and beasts and monsters and such things. And so it requires a solar hero, an emissary on the part of the solar powers, to cleanse the hall of its dark shadows. But never in his life did he find hall wardens more greatly to his detriment. Then the joyless warrior journeyed to Heorot. The outer door, bolted with iron bands, burst open at a touch from his hands. With evil in his mind and overriding anger, Grendel swung open the hall's mouth itself. At once, seething with fury, the fiend stepped onto the tessellated floor. A horrible light, like a lurid flame, flickered in his eyes. He saw many men, a group of warriors, a knot of kinsmen, sleeping in the hall. His spirits leapt, his heart laughed. The savage monster planned to sever before daybreak the life of every warrior from his body. He fully expected to eat his fill at the feast. But after that night fate decreed that he should no longer feed off human flesh. Hugelac's kinsman, the mighty man, watched the wicked ravager to see how he would make his sudden attacks. I noticed that Beowulf is the only one who is wide awake here, and he's watching Grendel's every move, and he does nothing to save his companion Hanshu from being eaten by Grendel. And so perhaps Tolkien is correct that is a holdover from a ritual combat in which two companions of his would have tried their mettle against Grendel and failed, where he succeeded. The monster was not disposed to delay, but for a start he hungrily seized a sleeping warrior, greedily wrenched him, bit into his body, drank the blood from his veins, devoured huge pieces, until in no time he had swallowed the whole man, even his feet and hands. Now Grendel stepped forward, nearer and nearer, made to grasp the valiant Geat stretched out on his bed. The fiend reached towards him with his open hand. At once Beowulf perceived his evil plan, sat up, and stayed Grendel's outstretched arm. Instantly that monster, hardened by crime, realized that never had he met any man in the regions of earth in the whole world with so strong a grip. In a certain manner of speaking, it's as though the sun here is striking the moon. This is a combat of sun and moon, of solar and lunar powers, and Grendel's wound with the ripping off of one of his arms almost suggests the laming motif that's associated with the limping hero. Usually a hero who's associated with the moon has a limp. In this case, Beowulf loses an arm, but it's like the moon being wounded and then beginning to wane from that point as it shrinks. He was seized with terror. But for all that, he was unable to break away. He was eager to escape to his lair, seek the company of devils, but he was restrained as never before. And so we'll pause there for this episode and finish it with the next one.